Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming to the event at the Human-Centered AI Institute. We're very happy to have John Mack as our speaker this morning, or I guess at this point, it's this afternoon, talking about It's High Time, Ensuring Human-Centeredness Before It's Too Late. Just to tell you a little bit about John before the presentation, John Mack is an author, artist, speaker, and founder of the nonprofit Life Calling, whose mission is to preserve our humanity in the digital age, which is increasingly becoming important as more and more devices kind of compete for our attention. Over the past decade, John has expressed concern over the effects on our humanity in the wake of our increasing dependence on smart devices. In September of 2022, Mack debuted Life Calling's signature program, A Species Between Worlds, Our Nature, Our Screens, in New York City. And this was a public educational forum and immersive exhibition which serves as an invitation to contemplate our relationship to our devices and the surrounding world while inciting the introspection needed to prevent the loss of our humanity. It was through this event, actually a little before this event, that John and I got to know each other. And I have to say, it was quite an impressive event in terms of both the display and the speaker lineup they had there. Mack is an honoree of the Explorers Club 50, which is 50 people changing the world who the world needs to know about. And luckily for you, you're here, so you'll get to know a little bit more about him. He's a frequent speaker at conferences and universities on the subjects of technology, awareness, and consciousness that has served as an adjunct lecturer for the graduate program of design at the University of Lisbon. Additionally, Mack serves as a board member of Fair Play, and I love this, an organization that strives to create a world where kids can be kids, free from the false promises of marketers and manipulations of big tech. After the presentation, we'll open it up to questions, and there will be a book signing in the back. Without further ado, John Mack.
Thank you. So I am extremely happy to be here right now. And when I say here, I mean two places. The first being on this planet at this time, and the second being here at Stanford HAI, and here's why. In the same way that climatologists are saying, we're approaching a tipping point where once crossed, we'll never be able to turn back to what this planet was naturally. The same is happening with our inner environment. We are approaching a tipping point where once crossed, we will never be able to again return to what it means to be human. So I'm here to promote humanity. I'm not anti-tech, I am pro-humanity, right? You can be pro-tech as well there. And this is all about how do we move into the future where we use tech rather than tech using us. And I'd like to pull up, just start here. I'm presenting It's High Time, Ensuring Human-Centeredness Before It's Too Late. And I went onto YouTube and I found this video that was posted by Stanford HAI about Stanford HAI. And there are 3 quotes from this video that I pulled that I want to share with you. And what all of these quotations have in common is the following. AI cannot be centered unless its creators are centered too. So let's just look at these quotes. In order to train AI to benefit humanity, the creators of AI need to represent humanity. Stanford High is based on 3 principles. First is a bet that the future of AI technology is going to be inspired by our understanding of human intelligence. What is our understanding of human intelligence? Anyone who is developing artificial intelligence, whether in the laboratory or applying it in an industry, has to put ethical questions at the forefront of that very work. So the question is, what is human-centeredness, and how do we know if we're centered or not? And I find the best way to address that question is to go out into nature. I find nature a very revealing way to figure out where you're balanced or imbalanced. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to go on a walk through the park and explore the truth of our nature. So I'm a photographer by trade, and back in, I guess, around 2015, I started exploring national parks. And I'd like to share with you today some of my favorite photographs of these journeys. I think you're going to like them a lot. So here we go. So I love this picture. This is one of my favorite pictures of the national parks. I don't even know where I am. It doesn't matter. What matters is my hair. So this is Death Valley, and I knew it was going to be super windy there. So when I was in New York, I got my hair done, and I asked for a hair gel that would keep the hair stiff so I could take selfies. And look at that. I mean, it's beautiful. I think it's great. It's a great, great image. I love this one. So I'm actually trying to balance a cloud with my hand, like using perspective. It's quite complicated because the clouds are moving and my phone is moving, and I failed miserably at it. But here's what I really don't like about this picture: all the junk on the right there. So I crop all of that out and check out this Instagram post. This is incredible. So I'm sure all you know what Instagram is, but let me tell you why I love it. First, John C. Mack posts my own space for self-expression. I have 112 likes. People can like my stuff. And I have comments on it too, where people can talk about it. So here's another park. Love this picture. So actually, this is Alaska. And the reason I'm wearing a bandana is because there's no way that hair gel would have worked. So I've got that bandana on. And the pilot that you see there on top of the plane, he was extremely upset with me because all I did was take these selfies. And he said, look, you're really missing out on something deep here in these parks. You should put your phone away. And I said, whatever, I'll put you away. So I cropped him out. I got another Instagram post out of it, right? But actually, I took his advice and I thought, the next park I go to, I'll put my phone away. And this is what happened. My next park was Joshua Tree National Park here in California. And look at what this landscape looked like without my phone. Colorless, absolutely drained by vital color, emptiness. I hated it. The only thing this landscape is so boring. The only thing to do here is really go for a walk in the desert. So the only thing to do here is walk around the desert. Now, that's not my quote, okay? This is from a book by a woman named Amber Scher, who's an illustrator, called Subpar Parks. And she goes on to Reddit, and she actually finds quotes of people who had terrible experiences in parks, okay? So you see America's most extraordinary national parks and their least impressed visitors. And there's a guy giving one star rating. So Joshua Tree was definitely a 1-star rating for me. So here's another national park. I don't even know where that is. I think that's, I don't know what it is. I think it's in Utah. Anyway, totally boring, right? So here's a comment on that. Somewhat bland, right? Couldn't agree more. It was terrible. Olympic National Park. No wow factor, right? I mean, amazing. So here I am in Olympic National Park, and I'm realizing, okay, so I've taken this guy's advice. I've left my phone at home. I'm spending money traveling the world only to have these terrible, empty experiences. And that was a wonderful time to realize this, because this image here was actually taken in 2016. And in 2016, an incredible gaming app came out called Pokémon GO, okay? And I thought, ooh, what is this? Maybe this makes the national park experience better. So for those of you who don't know what Pokémon GO is, I'm going to sort of quickly get into it. Pokémon GO is an augmented reality gaming app that uses geolocation-based technology to project virtual creatures called Pokémon over the natural world. And another thing that it does is it shows a virtual version of the landscape that you're in. So if you look at that picture up there, you're seeing my phone, and it's a virtual version. So, the physical world is on the left. You see the water on the left, and then you see the water on the phone. And I'm actually in there. There's an avatar in there, and I'm tethered to that avatar. So when I walk in the real world, that avatar also walks. And the great thing about this game, there's this little ball in the middle. It's called a Pokeball. Let me see if I can. Okay, there's this ball, and it's red and white, and you'll see it soon. And it's a cage. And what you do is when you see a Pokemon, you flick this cage and you capture these Pokemon in these Pokeballs. So check out how cool this is. So that's a Pokemon. And I'm spinning this ball to give it speed, and I throw it, and I catch him. And I love this part. Watch this. Wait for it. Wait for it. Gotcha. That feeling of capturing this thing is so satisfying. And you might think, oh my God, that's so boring. Who cares about this? No, but watch this. This game was so popular that people were playing, not kids, adults were playing this game on the job. Okay, so this is an ISIS briefing at the State Department.
To confront them in the information space. As the secretary said earlier today, though, and I think it's an important reminder, you're playing the Pokemon thing right there, aren't you?
I'm just keeping an eye on it.
It's an important reminder. We know this won't be easy. We recognize it's a challenge, and we're clear-eyed about the work we still have to do. This is why we convene this important ministerial, and we'll continue to work with our coalition partners to defeat Dash. Did you get one?
No, the signal is not very good.
Sorry about that.
I just wanted to ask first.
So he said, did you get one? And the guy said, no, the signal's not very good. So you need cell phone signal to play this game. Okay, so yeah, funny. But that's not what convinced me to pick up this game. What began to really convince me was this. This is called a Pokémon GO stampede. And this happened in Taipei, Taiwan.
Taiwan Pokemon Go players stampede, searching for Snorlax. Thousands of people flocked to Beitou, a northern district of the Taiwanese capital Taipei, on Saturday, but not for its famous hot springs. No, sir. They were Pokemon Go players competing against each other to catch a rare Pokemon known as Snorlax. And you can see for yourself.
Not for the famous hot springs, to catch a rare Pokemon. So the real thing that sort of turned it for me, where I thought, I've got to get this app. I'm going to show you a point of view within a stampede that happened actually out here in California.
Okay. Oh my God. Oh my God. What is happening? Oh, there it is.
So that was it for me. I needed to be a part of that. Okay, so I download Pokemon Go and I go to my next national park. And this is Biscayne Bay. This is Biscayne Bay National Park in Florida. And you see how terrible this is. And I load up Pokemon Go and boom, look at that. It's beautiful. I got the colors back into my life. I had fun again, purpose, something to do, right? I love look at that. That landscape is totally uncontaminated by humanity. It's wonderful. This is actually off the coast of California. This is Channel Islands National Park. Whatever, this landscape's terrible. Pokemon Go. Boom, look at that. Beautiful. It's a savior, really. Here's one more. This is Teddy Roosevelt National Park with Pokemon Go. Incredible. Love that. Love that water. This is Isle Royale National Park. And I go to play Pokemon Go, no cell service, and terrible Wi-Fi. Right? So here I am in my hotel, can't play Pokemon Go, and I have FOMO, right? I know my friends are playing this game and I don't have connection. I feel like I'm missing out. I'm also thinking, wait a second, what has happened to me? I've become addicted to this game. And so I hop onto the internet and I do some research and I learn that actually in just 1 month since its release, Pokemon Go had won 5 Guinness World Records. And I won't go through each of those right now. But I also entered something else, which I found really interesting, something called self-determination theory. This is psychology. This is human motivational psychology. And the gurus on this are actually a guy named Richard Ryan and Ed Deci. And what they mainly do, it's complicated stuff, I don't understand all of it, but I'm going to sort of condense it into this. They distinguish from physiological needs. They have a category called psychological needs. And what they say about this is the following. We posit a core set of psychological needs that, like physiological needs, are universally essential for optimal human functioning, regardless of developmental epoch or cultural setting. And those needs are autonomy, relatedness, competence, those 3 needs. By autonomy, we mean feeling volitional, congruent, and integrated. Relatedness, feeling socially connected. Competence, feeling affectance and mastery. Now, there's something very interesting about this. When you have all of these 3 things together, if you're feeling all of this at once, you are said to be happy. Okay? And this is also called the ARC of happiness or the arc of happiness. Interesting with the ARC of happiness is that Pokémon GO, as there's a great article called The Psychology of Pokémon GO by Dr. Paul Marsden. And he speaks to how Pokémon GO gives all these three needs at once while you're playing the game. So autonomy, you're moving around in the world at your own volition, discovering the world. Relatedness, you're meeting people along the way. There's a community that's sort of bigger than you that you're a part of. Competence, you're collecting these little creatures, right? So playing Pokemon Go, you are happy. Now there's a big problem with all of this. And the problem is the following. Let's say one of these needs is missing. Let's say I don't feel competent. Well, now I'm in a state of psychological lack, okay? So here I am at Isle Royale National Park, no Wi-Fi service, and I'm confronted with this landscape, a landscape of psychological lack. And it is in the state of psychological lack where the virtual journey begins. And what I mean by virtual journey, I mean the search outside of yourself to fill the landscape of lack. And we're going to go through this journey here. I want to move to the virtual landscape. That movement here is the movement of the Pokemon Go Stampede, running away from one landscape toward the virtual landscape. Now, I couldn't get to the Pokemon Go landscape because I didn't have cell service. So what was I forced to do? I was forced to face this landscape. And as terrible as it is to face this landscape, I'd like to pose the following today. Could this landscape of lack be your best friend? And the reason I say this is because this predicament here is forcing us to land on a happiness that is unconditional of whether you're feeling related ARC, okay? So the question is, can we instill a feeling of relatedness, competence, and autonomy, regardless of how the outer world looks to us? That would be an unconditional happiness. That happiness would be totally within your own power. And if you were to do this, would you penetrate that landscape? So no longer going the virtual direction, but penetrating the landscape of lack. Could this landscape here actually be a membrane that when crossed, you actually enter a completely different dimension, which I would call the dimension of union or the dimension of oneness, and I'll just put the circle there. This here is actually alchemy, and I'm using digital symbols for it, and I will put an alchemical symbol here. This is the Ouroboros. This snake here is completely satiated on the fact of its mere existence. It needs nothing outside of itself to satiate itself. Now, the masters of propaganda and materialism, they don't want us out there. This is freedom from their game. They want us inside. They want us over here. Because when there's cell phone reception, that's where media reaches us. And I'm going to show you sort of some of the media that reaches us. I'm going to use as the propaganda machine. I'm going to show you the theme song for Pokemon. So pay attention to the lyrics here. They're pretty good. So the propaganda machine pulls me from that landscape, distracts me from that landscape, and wants me to crave something else. Here we go. Here's the lyrics.
I want to be the very best, like no one ever was. Catch them is my real test. To train them is my cause. How to travel across the land, searching far and wide. Each Pokemon to understand the power that's inside. Pokemon, it's you and me. I know it's my destiny. Oh, you're my best friend. In a world we must defend. Pokemon, our hearts so true.
Yeah, I love that. So here's what's great about the Pokemon Go lyrics. So we have Pokemon, gotta catch 'em all, competence, it's you and me, relatedness, I know it's my destiny, autonomy, Pokemon is happiness. So it's jam-packed there just in the lyrics. How about my Instagram post? My own space for self-expression, autonomy, 112 likes, competence, 7 comments, relatedness, Instagram is happiness. So it seems like, just based on this theory, that what we're searching for in this virtual endeavor is, in a sense, a virtual happiness. But that brings up a much deeper question that I was able to ask this man. This is Yuval Harari, and he and I had a conversation about a year ago in Israel that was recorded. And I'm just going to play this quickly for you.
Back in 2016, I read an article about something called a Pokemon GO stampede. Are you familiar with the game Pokemon GO?
Yes, very much.
I didn't know what that even looked like, so I went to YouTube, and it took me to the streets of Taipei.
Mhm.
And it's an intersection where traffic had come to a complete standstill as thousands of people were running to chase a Pokemon, a rare Pokemon. It was intelligent life putting their immediate reality on hold to chase a figment of their device's imagination.
Mhm.
My question to you is, if you envision this sort of mass, what it looked like was a mass migration of humanity leaving something
Mhm.
and going towards something else, the virtual construct.
Mhm.
Would you have any idea, or maybe we could even get into it together, what is it that we're running away from?
So you have to watch the rest of that. So this is the question that I want to pose today. I've got 3 questions, 3 main questions that I want to pose today. What are we running away from? That's the first question. And one way to get to the answer to that question is to ask this. This is sort of a sub-question. What are we running toward? So if we are running toward a sense of happiness, does that necessarily mean we're actually running away from a landscape of unhappiness? And I gave this talk actually in London, kind of a different talk in London. And a woman at the end of the talk raised her hand and said, you know what, I didn't quite understand this because I don't play Pokemon, so this doesn't concern me. And Pokemon Go is anyway a fad, like that's just way over. And 2 things. Number 1, I'm not speaking about Pokemon Go right now. And as far as fads go, Pokemon Go may be a fad. What is not a fad is the following. The moment the human is thrown the precise, tailored bait, we run for it as if our lives depended on it. That is not a fad. That we see throughout history. So, a little bit more about what I'm talking about here. Here, this was Pokemon Go. This was the Stampede, and we listened to this propaganda, right, which pulled us to that landscape over there. And this is the currents that it caused.
A northern district of the Taiwanese capital, Taipei, on Saturday.
We can just as easily go to this one.
Let's go! It's the one and only Grammys. With performances by
The propaganda of the Grammys pulled us towards fame, a desire for fame. Here's Michael Jackson's Stampede. And we can go to here as well.
Meine Arbeit für richtig hältst. Ob du glaubst, dass ich fleißig gewesen bin, dass ich gearbeitet habe.
And here's this Stampede. So what we're seeing is the following. Augmented reality of the device runs analogous to projections of the psyche. One is the figment of the device's imagination. The other is the figment of the mind's imagination. Neither of them exist. They are illusions. They are nothing. This stampede was for nothing. Didn't exist. Spanish Catholic Inquisition, for nothing. A belief, the worship of a thought. For nothing, for nothing. Genocide in Myanmar for nothing. Sports games, animosity, taking sides for nothing. Now let's get back to the Pokemon Go stampede. So here I am in this landscape, and I want to go out of that landscape, and I chase the Pokemon Go sort of regime, if we can call it right now. And now Niantic, the makers of this game, they're really smart. See, they know that at some point this game is going to get boring. So they have a whole library of updates that they'll release once this gets boring. So watch what happens to this landscape when it becomes black and white and colorless. As it becomes colorless, I'm able to quickly get out of that and go to the next update. So I'm constantly being distracted away from this landscape. They also know that at some point, Pokemon Go is going to be boring. Just the game itself will be boring. And so they've made Harry Potter Wizards Unite, which was a complete failure, but that was also Niantic. And where this is actually leading to at the end of the day is it's heading towards the Metaverse. Okay. And what I want to do is take a look at what the Metaverse might look like in the future with the help of AI, using mixed reality glasses. So right now, the Metaverse is being spoken about using goggles, virtual reality goggles, which is a complete separation from reality. This is what it will look like if we can use it with glasses. And you'll see this sort of hybrid of physical reality and digital reality. As if we didn't have enough to look at in a grocery store. So just a bombardment of information and illusion. So there's something, we'll get back to it, but there's something very peculiar about this Metaverse thing that we're going to talk about, and AI. And we'll get to that soon, but I want to flag it now. When we look at the process here of going from one landscape to the other, we were speaking about Pokemon Go and gaming and Harry Potter Wizards Unite, now the Metaverse. I'm going to put this in the category of our lives called recreation. So let's say you like to play games. When you have your moments of recreation, you pull up Pokemon Go. But we can just as easily put this into another category of our lives. Let's do work profession. So let's say I'm feeling incompetent. I don't have competence. I'm feeling incompetent, and I need to leave this landscape. I'm actually unemployed. Let's say I'm unemployed. So what do? I look for employment. Okay? And that fills this void. Now I have competence. Well, people around me are now being promoted, and I've been there for 5 years. So something's not feeling right. I don't feel competent anymore. And as soon as that starts getting incompetent again, I might be getting a promotion to manager. And you work yourself up, and let's say you get up to, what's next year, CEO. And let's say, I mean, you can't do much better than CEO, but let's say you actually become the president of the United States. You get to sort of like the peak. The great thing about the virtual endeavor, which is what we're talking about, is that it is always fleeting. It will never last. The outer constructs that we consume will always die out, and we'll be searching for the next thing. So after President of the United States, the great thing about the virtual journey is that you're always then again delivered to this landscape that at some point we're going to have to face. And that's why I'm here today, because it is high time that we face this landscape and uncover what this is all about. We can just as easily go to another part of our lives. Let's call this relationships. Let's say my name is Jessica, and I'm not feeling related. Okay, so there's my landscape of unrelatedness. And I find Paul. Paul fills that inner void, right? Well, I introduce Paul to my friends and family, and they don't like him very much, so now I'm not feeling competent, right? So then I move on to Chris. This is what the rebound is. I mean, we have a word for this. When you break up with somebody, rather than facing that landscape of pain and loneliness, we rebound and jump into the next relationship. How much of our lives, what percentage of our lives is a rebound? And I'm not just talking relationships. Move on from Chris, go to Jeff. I'm not saying we shouldn't have relationships. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have work or recreation. The question that I'm asking is, do we own these things for free, or do they own us? In relationships, imagine if I had done my homework first before getting into the relationship. The question is, if we had done our homework first, our homework, how many relationships would have lasted as long as they did? How many relationships wouldn't have even begun to begin with? Right? And again, delivered to our best friend the opportunity to move through this membrane. Last category of life, I'm going to call this the spiritual devotional category. Let's say I was born Catholic. Okay, so I'm Catholic. Well, the Messiah never really showed up again, so that didn't work. So I've moved from there. I'm going somewhere else. Now I'm a new age person. I'm doing yoga, and I got super flexible. But enlightenment didn't happen there either, so I give that up. And now I move into Buddhist and now I'm a Buddhist, and now I'm meditating like crazy. And I've been told that I have to meditate thousands of lifetimes in order to reach enlightenment. And I was hoping on that last day when I was meditating that enlightenment would hit me over the head before I fall asleep, and it didn't. So I move on to the next thing, and I consume. Where am I right now? I'm in Brazil consuming ayahuasca, right? And I go down to Brazil, and have this great consciousness experience. And I come back and I tell all my friends, "Oh, it's amazing! You really got to do it." And I go down again and again and again. Well, that doesn't work. Now we're all doing psilocybin, right? We're all microdosing on psilocybin these days, right? So laughter in the audience. Yeah. But arriving again to your best friend, this landscape that at some point we're going to have to face. Now, the reason I've stacked these landscapes on the right, they're actually the same landscape. But the reason why I've stacked them is because I'm trying to show a distancing from a difficulty in arriving back at that landscape. And what I mean by that is, I'll give you an example. I remember when Avatar, the first movie, came out in IMAX 3D, okay? And I go in there and I'm wearing these big glasses and I'm watching this. It's sensory overload. And I walked out thinking, how am I ever going to be able to go back to a normal cinema and enjoy that experience? So there's a level of numbness that's every time we upgrade, we're creating a numbness. The more efficiently we're fed, the more difficult the withdrawal. And I think that a lot of what we're seeing today with ADD, ADHD, whatever you want to call it, even I, for example, not having the patience to get through a book, right, has to do with this level of numbness from this continual upgrading of distraction and sensory overload. Now, I said there was something very interesting about this metaverse. Here's what I have to say about that. All of these categories of life are finding a niche in the metaverse. We'll be able to live all these things out in a digital space. And you might think, oh, well, that's no big deal because the metaverse will get old too, and I'll eventually just be delivered to the landscape of, well, my best friend, the landscape of lack, right? That's not going to happen. Not in these days, not where technology is going. There are books on your chairs. One is called Notes to Selfie, where I speak about something called the inverse universe. I'm not going to get into it right now, maybe in Q&A, but the inverse universe in a nutshell, I call it the inverse universe, is when the digital becomes the new physical. It is when man becomes machine. And what's happening is we're moving toward the solidification of the inverse universe. So this landscape of lack will never again enter our lives. And people might say, oh, John, what are you talking about? You're kind of crazy. And I've been saying this for a while, and thank the Lord that just 2 months ago, there was an article, an op-ed in the New York Times. You can have the blue pill or the red pill, and we're out of the blue pills. And this was written by Yuval Harari, Tristan Harris, and Asa Raskin. And the quote is the following: "A curtain of illusions could descend over the whole of humanity, and we might never again be able to tear that curtain away or even realize it is there." So this brings up The second question: what drains the vital colors from our landscape? The second question out of 3 that I'm posing today. So I'm going to drop a few terms right now on sort of this space here, this dimension between the landscape of lack and the virtual construct. And you can pick and choose which labels make most sense to you. Some might be over some heads. I mean, some might recognize these labels. For starters, I'm just going to call this dimension in here the dimension of drama. This is the dimension of gain and loss and gain and loss and happy and sad, right? This is also the dimension of doing. If you were to penetrate the landscape, that would be the dimension of not doing. The dimension, the content of consciousness. That's the contentless consciousness outside of that. The dimension of virtual reality, and I don't just mean virtual reality of the devices, but virtual realities of the mind, belief systems, projections of our education and what we've bought into as a way of seeing reality. The dimension of reality. Dimension of separation. Out there, you're completely separated from your true nature there. Outside of that membrane, penetrating that membrane, you're in the dimension of union. Dimension of duality. I said gain, loss, right? Happy, sad, happy, sad. Dimension of oneness. This is for more spiritual groups. The 4th dimensional consciousness. Outside of that would be 5th dimensional consciousness. The dimension of suffering, which I call gravity, and then the dimension of non-suffering, which I call weightlessness. And so I gave this talk in London. My publicist was there, and he said, there's this part that comes after gravity and weightlessness that you should take out of your presentation because it's extremely abstract, no one understands it, and it doesn't serve you, and it doesn't serve the message. So I decided to keep it in there anyway. So what I will say, I'll give this disclaimer. If you don't understand any of it, it's fine. Just file it under what the heck is he talking about? It might make sense one day. So here we go. If the landscape of lack is a projection of my mind, in itself a virtual reality, and if there's a membrane, okay, that I'm suggesting, there's a membrane at that landscape, if I'm the center of it and I'm projecting it and there's a membrane, it means I'm actually within a sphere. So, and just file it. This is the consciousness paradigm of planet Earth right now. I call this planetary consciousness. Then there's off-planet consciousness, space, okay, contentless consciousness. This here is the 1-star rating. We are living on this planet a 1-star rating, which means an extremely low quality of life. Not quantity. We've got abundance, that's done, but a different quality. And so what we want to do is we want to ascend off planet. So spiritual ascension is ascending off planet out of the gravity of suffering. And so you remember that round, that circle? I'll put the Ouroboros around that. So what we want to do is actually puncture, move through this sense of fullness and completion. And once you do that, once you've ascended off of gravity, this is the eternal star rating out here. This is deep, deep beauty out here. And it's funny, I'll say it real quickly. So I gave this talk at the Explorers Club in New York, and there were some astronauts in there. And I spoke about how there's an effect called, it's called the overview effect. And a guy named, I think his name is Frank White, wrote about this. When astronauts would go into space and look back at the Earth, they would have a shift in consciousness, a feeling of oneness, and it changed their life even when they got back down to earth. And what I call that a portal. Now, what a portal does is it's when the physical outside switches something inside. So up until now, I've been speaking about let's switch something inside to get out there, to connect to that. And in a portal, what happens is something out there does something to this in here. Okay? And I want to also share you a very, just a quick story. So on this landscape. So we're constantly being told to buy into things. And it's hard to see which things to buy into and not. And my daughter, who's 15, well, when she's 16, but when she turned 15, a friend of hers gave her a gift, and it was a mirror. And it was, I think the friend had written with a Sharpie on the actual mirror itself. And when my daughter was at school, I looked at this mirror and I read this quote and I thought, oh my God, this quote cannot be in my house. And definitely not in a mirror where she looks at herself. It's one of those wise quotes that gets like tossed around Instagram and Pinterest. And I just really bothered me. So when she came back from school, I said, Lucia, can you please read this quote to me? And she said, sure. And this is the quote. This is what she says. And like the moon, we must go through phases of emptiness to feel full again. And I thought, oh God. And I said, Lucia, that's what the moon looks like from the earth. And she says, what do you mean? And I said, well, what does the moon look like from the sun? And she says, always full. And I said, exactly. Don't buy into it. Move your positioning to the source of light, and then you're always full. And she looked at me. She was 15 years at the time, and I thought she was going to think I was crazy. And she looked at me. She said, thanks, Pa. Thanks, Papa. She's so cute. I love her. So anyway, little story there. Don't buy into it. Why is this important? This is important because there is a future on its way. When you see this image, the question is, who are the real Pokémon being caught? This is the digital takeover of human consciousness. It is happening as I speak. I kid you not. This is eternal satiation on the virtual construct. It is the eternal prison. Gotcha. Now, I'm going to do some things with this imagery. I like using imagery for symbols. And so this is what we're going to go do. We're going to go back to our Pokemon landscape symbols. We're going to get off this planetary thing. I'll replace this. There's the empty landscape. On the other side of this, when you have your device, you have this landscape. This is a coin. What we're seeing are two sides of the same coin. This is the coin of virtual reality, the coin of illusion. The illusion of my projection of lack, the illusion of the filler filling me. Okay. Just to make things easier, I'm going to bring the other side of that coin onto this, and I'll create this symbol here, which you all might recognize. And now we have to handle the space aspect. We want to ascend off of this duality and land on the truth of nature. Okay? When we go out into nature, we're not going out into nature just to connect to nature. We're actually searching for space, an inner space. So I'll use the natural world as a symbol for that space. And I want to address this ball of illusion here. And we're going to start labeling it with some things. I'm going to throw a few things at you here that you can digest and work with. We can talk about it in Q&A if you'd like, or just take it home with you. So this side, unhappiness, non-ARC. The flip side of that, happiness, I'm going to call that virtual happiness because it depends on your experience in the outer world. It's conditional. Is there a happiness that is non-conditional? And I will put that out here. I'll throw some other ones at you here. Emptiness, virtual emptiness. This is the coin of illusion. Virtual emptiness, virtual fulfillment, real fulfillment, unconditional fulfillment. The moment something has an opposite, there's a condition. The higher fulfillment does not have a condition. There is no opposite. How many of you are glass half empty people? How many of you are glass half full people? How about this option? It's just perfect. Hate, like this one. What's the opposite of hate? Love. What coin is this? This is the coin of emotional attachment. You have to be, in order to experience hate, there has to be an emotional attachment. And so we have this other thing that we call unconditional love, right? That has no conditions. So this is conditional. Unconditional love would be out here in the space. And I always love this topic because sometimes I ask people, what is this thing, unconditional love? And is there such a thing? And I most often get a parent who says, well, I have unconditional love for my kids. And I said, well, that's great, but what if they weren't your kids? See the condition? They don't have that same love for my kid. Okay? Atheist. I thought this would be a good one for Stanford HII with all the computer science, and I might be wrong there, but on the other side of this, I will put religious. This is the coin of belief, of not knowing. So I love it when I ask an atheist, what don't you believe in? God. What? God. What don't you believe in? God. In order to not believe in something, you need the object to not believe in it. Okay? Outside, this is knowing. I don't believe I'm talking here right now. I know I'm talking here right now. Okay? And we're just going to do a quick thing in history here. I could call this the Renaissance, and then we switched over to the Age of Reason, right? Science, logic, reason, empiricism. The real Age of Enlightenment is out there. We have not reached that point yet as a collective. This is Carl Jung, masculine toned energy, feminine toned energy, the merging of opposites. You have what he calls the syzygy. This is out here. Completely different dimension of consciousness we're talking about here. Here's a good one for this country. Republican, Democrat. This is the coin of identity, identity politics. Democracy is out there. The divide that we have here in this country, don't be fooled. This is not democracy. Democracy does not divide. Democracy does not take sides. Anyone read Into the Wild or see the movie Into the Wild? So what was his name when he was growing up in Atlanta? Christopher McCandless. That was the name his parents gave him. Okay? And he hated that name. He hated the entire education, the identity that was made through his environment. And what does he do? He leaves the home, hits the road, goes west to get out into nature. And on that journey, what does he do? He changes his name, Alexander Supertramp. Are either of those the real Christopher McCandless? No. One is a program of identity that he's accepted and that he rejects because he feels bondage in it. And then he comes up with this other name, which he interprets as freedom. It is freedom within a prison. And what does he try to do? He's actually trying to get out into nature, into that space. He's trying to get up there to the real Christopher McCandless. And the beauty of this book, in the way that it's told, is that he actually reaches that up in Denali, where they found his body. So now we'll get more toward the Stanford issues here. Human intelligence artificial intelligence, are either of those intelligence? I'm going to put both of those on the coin of intellect. Artificial intelligence is impossible. It's artificial intellect that we're dealing with. Intellect slices, it cuts, it is data bound. It needs proof, reason, pragmatism, witness. And I will put intelligence up here. So the difference is this. Intellect will discover atomic energy. Used without intelligence, you'll blow up a country. Used with intelligence, you'll light up a country. What's the opposite of low? High. So Stanford HAI. What high are we talking about here? Are we talking about that high? And let's look at it a different way. Human-centered artificial intelligence. Well, we've got uncentered over there. We've got centered over there. Is that really centered? The coin that I'm going to put these both on is the assumption that there's actually a center. Space doesn't have a center. Could it be that to be centered is to not have one? Moving forward into the future, when we speak about human-centered AI and the people who are creating these machines and coding, I would like to see them centered there. There is no agenda there. Well, there is, but it's not an agenda of the mind. The agenda comes from a higher order, which works always for the greater good of the community, because it does not separate, does not divide, it does not take sides. Now we're going to go back here with these funky little animations. Get back. So what we want to do is remove the illusion and arrive to space, the essence of our nature, the essence of what it means to be human. So this guy, the Grand Canyon, yeah. If he didn't have his device, would his landscape look like this? A giant hole. Probably. And this leads us to the third question of the day, which is the following. How might we arrive at the true colors of our nature? That's the third question of today. So here he is in front of this landscape. If he could realize that actually the hole isn't out there, but perhaps the hole is in here, and if he could fill that hole with his true colors, would he penetrate the membrane and arrive to the true colors of his nature? All I saw was a lake, mountains, and some trees. Grand Teton National Park. Well, the next time that's all you see, wait a little bit longer and see if anything shifts. Save yourself some money, boil some water at home. Oh, I mean, it's like, this is the 1-star rating. Well, if you could save yourself, would you arrive to the eternal spring? Trees block view, and there are too many gray rocks. I mean, that's Yosemite National Park. That's one of the most stunning places I've been, right? Well, if you could stare down that tunnel just a little bit longer and penetrate that darkness, would you arrive to the true colors of your nature? And so this is Kearsarge Pass. This is also in California. And I've got a book of poetry that I've written with all these landscapes. So this is a poem called Kearsarge Pass that I'll leave you with here. Kearsarge Pass. This is why we amateurs reach for our cameras. Go ahead, put the phone between yourself and Kings Canyon. Shoot it all you want, but it won't change anything. It being no different than the disconnect which prompts you to reach for it in the first place. The incomplete experience pocketed for completion at a more convenient time. But when? At home on a computer screen, with likes on social media, what is there to share, really? Half? A portion? A potential of what could have been? Is this what our nature is worth? A pass? Follow me on social media. Here's why I'm okay using these handles. Because I'm using it as a tool. We abdicate so much power to these devices and technology that the device becomes our reality and we become its tool. So I'm not saying we can't use technology. Let's use it. Let's not let it use us. Let's reclaim that power to return technology back to its tool function. And so I just want to list these questions here. Here's the first one. What are we running away from? What drains the vital colors from our landscape? And how might we arrive at the true colors of our nature? These are three questions that I think we should all be pondering in these days, because it is high time to step up to the plate right now. Thank you.
Thanks very much, John, for that very thought-provoking presentation. What we're going to do is have time for a few questions. We can have a seat. I'll start off with one just to get us going, and then we're happy to have folks come up to the microphone to ask questions, or we can run a mic to you. So if you have questions now, just feel free to come up onto the mic. But maybe the question I want to start with, because you looked at a lot of different aspects of this, is just kind of the question of, in your opinion, what is reality? What is our shared experience where we can actually say these are the things that we move beyond the two sides of the coin, that we move to a place where we actually are authentic and able to share that experience of some common reality among each other?
It's a fair question. And I like the question because I was speaking with, we do some work with the Center for Humane Technology, and I was speaking with one of the people there. AI, how we see it, it's sort of like this alien species that's arriving here to planet Earth. And if you've seen any of those movies, the story always goes, well, if humanity doesn't sort of unite under a shared vision of what it means to be human and unify as one species, they lose the battle. And that's what AI sort of represents right now. And I think in these times, it's extremely important to come to a common understanding of what reality is. We cannot afford to keep throwing reality into philosophy. So I'll just right now, I'm just going to define a way that I think, here's how I define reality. First of all, we call something virtual reality. So we know what virtual reality is. So we must have an understanding of what reality is, because we know the opposite. So let's go through that. If I have virtual reality goggles on, I'm in virtual reality. If I take those goggles off, I'm in reality. Not quite. Because I have goggles in the psyche that is running a program just like the virtual reality of the goggles. My program is my education, the beliefs that I've bought into. So here's where reality begins. Take the virtual reality glasses off. Take the programming of the mind off. And what you're left with is reality. So that's where I would define it.
Thank you for the really interesting talk.
Thanks for the laughter.
Absolutely. My pleasure. My question is, have you looked at some of the recent work on belief formation, both from the psychology and neuroscience scholarship? It's first part's rhetorical. I'll give you a little context. So there's a difference in how like people form like our perceptual system, which is like the visual system, the touch system, like moving our limbs and such. So that's one level of perception. And then there's another level of perception, like, expecting when the sun's going to, and where is the sun going to rise and set each day, or what people's beliefs are. That's another belief formation system. Well, what's turning out is that like the physical one, the one that we actually have to reach and grab things or we see stuff, that one's very flexible and it updates very quickly. If like the sun will turn, like if we like there's a solar eclipse going to happen or it's a cloudy day, it's not like it doesn't freak us out or anything. We just adapt to it. But if beliefs change on the ground, like say some people think the election got stolen or that their rights were taken away from them, and if they are or not, but they believe that's the case, those type of beliefs are much more intractable and not so changeable. So this is again, last couple of years, this has been new research that's come out. I was wondering, well, first, is that an area that you're going to take a look at as far as your understanding? And then two, is that the type of regrounding, if you will, that you're trying to kind of drive at, because the more physical grounding, perceptual, like ground level perceptual sensory that you want us to be tied into, in contrast to the constructed or virtual belief that I'm going philosophical here because I don't have the right vocabulary, but the virtual beliefs that we've actually started making up in our own heads. So is that kind of the contrast that you're trying to point to?
Okay, so let me start with the first question. I might have you reword the second one.
Sure.
First question. Research on beliefs doesn't interest me. And I'll tell you why. I mean, there's, like you said, there's physical sensory perception, right? Yes. And then there's this mind thing, this belief of, is the sun going to come up or right? So it's more of a psychological belief thing. It's not physical.
It's either beliefs about the physical world or belief about, say, what you're thinking, or belief about what.
So first of all, no one believe what I'm saying, please. No. I am very serious. Don't believe a word I have said today.
How do we think if we don't believe that you are saying it? If we don't believe you're saying it, how can I think about it?
Oh, no. I mean, so you're here right now and you're listening to me talk.
Yes.
Is that a belief? Is that a belief?
To my brain, yes, because my brain is reconstructing.
Okay, so here's what we need to do.
My background is neuroscience. I believe everything.
Okay. So what we need to do, and I'm very serious about this. Right. We need to get out of that kind of philosophy for a little while.
All right.
Because if we don't find a common ground on what's real, we're screwed. So if you're standing there right now and I ask you, are you standing there right now? Say yes.
Interesting. All right.
Okay. No, really. No, really. Just please. We need some kind of shared something of where the ground is. Okay. Number one, beliefs always have an agenda. And that is why, and you said they're much more difficult to change. Is that right? Beliefs, once they're ingrained.
Well, I didn't say why. I just said the research showed that.
The research. Well, here's why the research. So
that's I guess your theory, hypothesis.
Oh, no. So
that's actually one of the theories out there too. So I'll just.
Yeah. So I'm not so into theory, right, because that's all belief as well. I'm into what I know, and what I don't know, I don't know. Okay? And I don't go around talking about theories. I speak about direct experience for me. It might look like philosophy to all of you. That's fine. It's not your direct experience. It's mine. Okay? Belief always has an agenda. What I mean by that is, you mentioned, the elections are rigged, for example. There's an agenda to believe that. And the reason why it's so hard to change an agenda is because that agenda is protecting something, an identity that is resisting its own death. It could be the elections were rigged. Open-mindedness is much different than belief. Belief confuses the unknown for what's known. Yeah, I sit with that one.
Yeah, I'll sit with that one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your questions. Appreciate it.
Hi.
Hi.
John, thank you for taking us on a journey with you. Your image that we're becoming tools to the technology and this relationship is inverted speaks to me a lot. And I came to that conclusion during the pandemic, so I'm happy to hear you speak about it. Being somewhat of a technologist myself and knowing technologists, I don't think any or many of us want to be tools to our creations. I think we believe we're making tools. Yet we see so many examples still now of new technologies, especially now, where we're the tools. A striking example I heard is we could think of ourselves as appendages to our smartphones whose mission it is to find a wall outlet. Have
been there.
Have you met many technologists who have escaped from this mindset, who are aware of this? And if and when you have, what does it look like? It feels like a new take on technology and a new philosophy. And what do their creations look like?
It's a great question. So if I could just reword what you just said there at the end, it's not a new take on technology. It's a new take on humanity. Our perceptions of ourselves is so limited that there's fear that AI is going to replace our humanity. I mean, just think about that for a moment. How small we must think of ourselves to think that that might be a possibility. Now, if you believe that perception of yourself to be true, it's definitely going to look like that, right? I don't generally speak to technologists. The ones who I do speak to are those who are already sort of in the effort and the movement to correct this, like a Tristan Harris or an Asa Raskin or any of them at the CHT or Francis Haugen. So it's just not my world, so I can't really answer that question. But I do know that there are a lot of technologies out there that are being reworked and designed in a way to be more sort of human-centered. That I definitely know, and I've spoke to them as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. And forgive me if this question is silly, but if we accept that we're a result of a long evolution process, and perhaps the next iteration of humankind is humans enhanced by technology, would there be an argument against that, seeing how we already are living unsustainably as is, humans without much of intelligent tech? And the second question, how do we get involved in the organization or help?
Thank you so much. Great. Thank you. First question about technology advancing humans. If we don't know yet what it means to be human, how do we know if technology is advancing it? That's the first problem. Transhumanism, for example. Okay, this idea that technology and like in technology entering the body, for example, in parts becoming our physical body, that is the next step of our human evolution. Transhumanism requires something. It means first, in order to transhuman, to move, first you have to be human. Only then is there transhumanism. We haven't landed on what it means to be human yet. So transhumanism is not even transhumanism. It's a further upgrade to all of the limited beliefs and ideas that we have of what it means to be human. What's happening is this: technology is right now solidifying the prisons of the mind that we've always had. And that's why this discussion is so urgent. Never before have we been in a position where illusion would be solidified. There was always the hope that we could break a belief, come closer to reality. But the moment the digital implant is in our heads at the neocortex, which they're working on right now, and the moment that is run by AI, that is the solidification of what I call the inverse universe. So, and how can you help with the organization? Thank you so much for that question. Well, how can you? I think at this point, it's really spread the word. And we have a lot of programs going on right now. So I launched a big exhibition I'm a photographer by trade, obviously. I launched a big exhibition in New York in September of last year. It's now traveling to London. And we're doing a big sort of convening with like-minded partners, mission-aligned partners, academics, youth activations, and in the arts, where we're convening a big group there in London in, I think, May of 2024. So it's really spreading the word and letting people know that we're out there and following us on these great tools, which are our devices. So thanks for that.
Well, with that, in the interest of time and also to allow some time for book signing afterwards, I think we'll wrap up the formal program here, but I think you're going to sign some books for us.
Sign some books, answer some questions. Yeah, happy to do it.
Wonderful. So we have a little time to just kind of hang out. Thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for coming.